So, hi everyone, good to see you. This is the first session of two, which are going to be on the same content, just to cater for different time zones. I'm going to talk about Rosetta version 8.2, which was recently released. I will show some of the highlights, and I'll talk about some of the stuff which will come through in 8.3. And then also some updates on Specto, if time allows, to talk about what we're doing, where we're standing with the preservation, and also a glimpse into some of the stuff which we're doing, not only with the preservation, but talking about it in relation to digital preservation, really for your general awareness. So this recording, this session is being recorded, so you can also, I'll send through a link later on, so you'll be able to send over to your colleagues. So just a general overview of what we have in 8.2. So I didn't mention here all the defects and security patches, which are all included in the release notes, which are all publicly available on the Knowledge Center. So around data management, then one of the larger developments was indexing the structural map attributes to make them searchable. We've continuously working with customers on improving the workflow, the end-to-end workflow of working against S3 or with S3 storage. Continued developments of the better integration with the page, with the new online help. I will remind myself to send those who want an offline copy of the help to. I will send it over in PDF files. REST APIs, we've had some improvements, and also some improvements for those who are using Rosetta hosted on our data centers. Around preservation, then we've expanded the work that we started doing around preserving the reason for any changes done to metadata. So while the previous release we worked on descriptive, now we expanded it to any type of metadata. And documentation infrastructure, we've also added some improvements, a lot of third-party upgrades to make your environment as secure as possible. And hopefully I'll be able to show most of these, those at least which are demoable. So data, so it's around data management. So really one of the largest developments here was indexing of structural map attributes. So the structural map has div attributes which such as label and content IDs, which today aren't indexed. They aren't searchable today. You can see them in the METS file. You can export them, of course, and import, but you can't actually search by them. So they are now searchable in the system. So those who are really dependent on them for searching according to a specifications of hierarchy, for example, which otherwise aren't searchable, then now this is available. So this is pretty straightforward in the system. So if you just go into the search for objects, then you will now see that when you start typing in struct map, then you have the whole set of struct map div attributes. So for example, if we look for a label, text block, for example, then this will return many results which have that result, and we'll just see what this stands against in the actual METS file. So we'll look at the versions. And here we can find this text block here. So we can see this is part of the structural map attributes. So now all of these are searchable in a unique way in the system. So moving on to the next development, improved deposit from S3. So this one is less demoable. I will describe that we are really working with several institutions on having as much integration as possible with S3 storage. So just to remind you, we have today support for using S3 as a protocol, right? Not just as Amazon, also local object storage. and as permanent, mainly for the permanent storage. So operational storage still needs to run against other types of NFS storage, but of course for the permanent you can use S3, and we have now relieved the need to have an S3 deposit storage for running different normalizations and validations that we do on the content structure, on the XML, and so on. And now you can do this also. You don't need that additional piece of storage just for the deposit stage. So this is really making it much more streamlined and improving also the performance. So this request came from the customers, and now this is also available. So those who are working with S3, feel free to test this out. And let us know if you have any feedback. So this applies to METS content structure, and this is for various technical reasons. The requirement came from customers who are using METS deposits. And the reason is really on the different validations which are being run on METS content, which were dependent on, until now, on non-S3 storage, and now do not require that. So page-sensitive online help. So there's, as you know, we've shifted over to an online help, and really a part of this is because there's a lot of new stuff coming through also in the online help to improve the end-user experience of finding, searching different help. And we know that also specifically in Rosetta, there's been a struggle with all the many different PDF files, and it wasn't always clear-cut where you can find different pieces of information. So for example, now there's a knowledge assistant, an AI-based knowledge assistant, which has been introduced into the online help. So now you can use this also for Rosetta. So let's just see what this looks like. So now we've added page-sensitive online help. That's really what we've added on this release. So for example, if we look into collection management, then here about this page will now open up every page, of course, linked by an ID to the equivalent online page collections. So, and then you have this knowledge assistant. And here you can write, for example, where can I find documentation about Rosetta user management? Okay, and this either gives you a full response or refers you to the different locations of where you can find further information. Okay, so here you have links about user management in Rosetta, and other links. So a lot of really useful stuff, which will make it much easier for you to quickly find information about you, what you need in that specific page that you're looking at. Again, those who still need it in offline copies, please reach out to me and I will send you a copy. So around REST, a few additional expansions that we did in integrations, REST APIs. So this was also a request that came from the customers from consortium users where they have shared users. So those who aren't familiar, in a consortium, you can have a single user which was created by a specific institution, but they can have roles also in other institutions, specific roles. So they are still owned by the original institution, but they can log in and they can perform specific actions according to their roles in the other institutions. So we've now expanded support also around APIs. So you can return also shared user details, right? So if the API is for an institution, not necessarily that an institution where that user was created, but they have a role in that additional institution, then you can also retrieve details on that user from any institution where they have some sort of role in it. So again, this is expanding the support that we have for consortium management. Out of the box virus checker for Rosetta hosted. So here we have I think around 5 institutions today who are using Rosetta hosted, which is basically a version that we created around 4 years ago, where we offered Rosetta. We did a lift and shift offering Rosetta on our data centers, the same solution, but the storage which is supplied by us on the data center. Just unlike, by the way, what we're offering with Rosetta Plus, with Specto, where we're going to be offering it against the first stage with Amazon storage. So here it's a fully hosted on the data center, and it's not a plugin based solution. So it's an out of the box solution, and therefore there we provided also a virus checker, which is based on Clam AV, which is of course going to be fully maintained and upgraded. By the way, this is the same Clam AV which we provide as an example on GitHub also for any on-prem user. So we started off in the previous release by adding support for a reason, right? So end user makes a change to metadata in the system. Then the institutions want to preserve also why the change was done. And this is equally important for single and for bulk API, any sort of form of making changes to metadata in the system. You can now assign a reason. So let's see what this looks like, because we slightly changed the user experience of what we introduced in the previous release, where the support was just for descriptive metadata. So now what we've done is that in a single commit, then you could, in theory, make several changes to descriptive, non-descriptive metadata. And the assumption here is that in a single session, there is a single reason for those changes. But this was discussed with the customers, and really also for simplicity, then there is a reason per commit. And in that way, sort of, you just have to once put in the reason. You don't have to put it in multiple times for every small change that you do in a single session. And that will then be stored in the event of the change that you are doing. So the event could be add metadata, it could be change metadata. So let's just see briefly what this looks like. I'll take an example of, let's say, changing the access rights, i.e. 92482. So I'll show you both how the change is done and then also how it's reflected in the METS file. So if we go in, for example, the first representation, metadata, and assign another access right, and limit to 5 concurrent users, add. So I can also make other changes now, but now I will just do that one change, commit changes, and now there's a pop-up saying, well, what is the reason why you just made this change? And this is, it pops up only if you did make a metadata change. And we didn't change anything related to other reasons, right? For example, if you have a reason for adding a new file, not a non-metadata change that you've done, adding a file, deleting a file where you can add a reason, then that remains. You can still have a separate reason for a sort of a more aggressive change, such as adding a file or deleting one versus just a metadata change. So here I can write new policy for control digital lending in the institution. And now it's been committed. We'll take a look at the METs. And then, so as I mentioned, we won't look at it now, but it's fully documented. You can do this also in bulk, which means that when you run a job and you run a bulk change over many different IEs, then here we're assuming that there is a single reason for all of the changes done on all of those IEs, and therefore that single reason, which is going to be assigned on a task level, then also. Yeah, sorry. So that's on a task level, which that actually means that you can have if you have multiple tasks in one bulk job, you can actually have a reason per task. So, for example, you want to run assign an access right and change descriptive metadata actually in a task chain, you have the option of also differentiating between them because in bulk, we did want to provide sort of more flexibility around that. So if we take a look at the versions. So here we have the event and new assign AR policy. And here you have the reason of new policy for CDL in the institution. This, by the way, new policy for psychology material. This is the previous change that I made in the previous version of the METS file. In addition, we made the event outcome detail one index and searchable in the DNX events. So here you can just simply search. Sorry. This was also a request that came from the institutions, from the customers. Event outcome detail one. So here you have all of these different options where you can check if it contains keywords. Different institutions can have different information in this in this DNX field. We talked about this at the we spoke about this at our meetings with the working groups. So if we just take, for example, it's not empty, then you can search for it. And it will give you all of the responses which have some information in the event outcome detail one. So around authentication and infrastructure, so we've added support, expanded the support for IPv6. So this was also a potential security vulnerability, not an explicit one as we analyzed together with our experts, but we did expand the support for IPv6. So until now, the support was IPv4 for creating access rights. So today in Rosetta, for those who are less familiar, then you can restrict access to content via IP range. This could be on any level, right? You can restrict access on IE level, representation, or file level. So if you want to limit it to a specific building or area or region. And we now expanded it also to IPv6. So you can see an example on the access right policy over here. And this very much depends on the type of servers that you have in your environment, in your area. So if we search here for IPv6, it's pretty straightforward. IPv6 rule range. So here you can see that the values here of IPv6, and it just allows you to expand it, which till today just simply didn't work and didn't allow access. In addition, we have institutions who are running a consortia with SAML, and the request was that staff users who are logging into the Rosetta management area are redirected to the institution in the consortia that they have roles in. Okay, but if they don't have roles in institutions, they will be presented with a list of institutions to choose from. And there are different granularities here where the URL includes the institution code or doesn't include the institution codes. Of course, if it does include the institution code, then it will go directly to the institution which that user is requesting. Otherwise, if there is no institution code, they will be presented with a list of available institutions for them. They can select from it, and then they will be logged into their institution. So those who this is relevant for, please test this out and let us know if you have any feedback. Again, another expansion of our support for consortium management. So third-party upgrades, as always, we are committed to keeping your environment the most secure as possible. And we have done some massive work on upgrading OpenSSL, Tomcat, Struts, which we almost every release we upgrade. We've also upgraded the version of Vera PDF. This is a request that came from the Format Library Working Group on Digital Preservation. So all of those have been done in the scope of 8.2. This is actually only a partial list, so we're going to be sharing additional work which is going to be done in 8.3 because there are some internal discussions on some of the additional work, but just you'll be aware of some of what's going to be included in 8.3. So of course a lot of security patches and bug fixes, but we're also working, having discussions with customers on bundling exif tool and media info, which there is already existing mapping, but the issue here was a technical one, which I'm not going to go into right now, where until now it was dependent on a script plugin, which prevented it from being bundled and could only be installed individually in institutions' local format library. And to continue expanding the support for S3 integrations. And as I mentioned, there's going to be more, which is going to be communicated and discussed with the community. So just a few words on Specto. So we've been working, we're working towards the first drop, which is going to be coming out beginning of the Q1 of 25. We're working with development partners and soon also some early adopters. It's looking very nicely, the solution, which at the first stage is going to be dependent on Alma and is going to allow uploading content either from Alma or from non-Alma, but it will be available for Alma institutions. And the stage after that is going to separate out the solution also for non-Alma institutions. We're having a lot of discussions with the development partners. We have the topical group, which has been incredibly efficient, useful for us, where we've been covering not only issues which are directly impacting how we are implementing the first stage of Specto preservation, but also, of course, will have a big effect on the long-term strategy of digital preservation and how we'll be implementing different standards and rethinking a lot of really basic foundations of the solution. So I guess this is an opportunity to thank a lot of you who have been investing a lot of time and thoughts into those discussions. This is an example of the analytics dashboard, which we're currently right now has been developed and is being added to the dashboard. So this is based on the OPI. It's those who are familiar with Alma or other solutions. This is very, very easy to customize, to visualize. You can create your own reports. You can create the visualizations in a super easy way. And these are just an example of some of the reports which have been produced based on the different subject areas. So there is a specific preservation subject area which has been added. And the main reason for this is mainly a starter, right? This can be expanded. We can go wild with this later on with the subject area. But here you can see some of the reports of number of titles per preservation status, formats by number of files, top 10 formats by size, and of course usage also, where you can see detailed usage, which also you can cut down into different segments of views by collection, for example, or really any type of parameter which interests you. This is together with also the work which we're now completing on the new the finalized metadata editor, which is a form-based editor. In parallel to risk management. So risk management was going to be based on DARA, which is a recommendation, a database recommendation workflow, which runs on the institution's data and proactively notifies institutions of any type of recommendation, and in our case, of any files which might be at risk, with all of the relevant information on the files which are at risk. And on the last stage, calls to action, specific use cases can, for example, rerun the validation stack, rerun Droid, for example, if it's necessary, or lead to the migration job, which will migrate files from one format to another. So a lot of sort of system-based logic, which will be then be offered to the end user to decide what they want to do to their data. We don't enforce any changes to the data. We provide recommendations and allow the users to easily lead to the action, which will be performed on those files. So I'm just going to, before I finish, I would just want to show you a glimpse into some of the other changes. We started having also discussions about digital asset management connection to digital preservation. So a lot of the discussions and the work which is being done in Specto in general for special collections around GenAI, around delivery, will have a direct impact, or at least will need to be discussed, of course, with the digital preservation community, especially GenAI work, which of course has a lot of concerns that at least needs to be taken into account when it comes to data privacy, security, and this is all being taken into account. So there's going to be full control over where you run GenAI. We're now also running it over a cloud storage, but once we will open up the solution to local storage, and also you will have full control over which data will have the GenAI services run on. So that's just in a general sort of a general statement that you will still have control. You're certainly not losing control. The idea is that you will only benefit from the services which are being added to the solution around GenAI. And we do believe that once we institutions who do take into account all of these concerns and all of the copyright terms and licensing and so on, they will have a huge amount to benefit from these services. And really the idea is to take that content which is not discoverable and make it discoverable, or at least much more discoverable than what it is today, by extracting entities from image files, by doing smart analysis of textual documents, smarter full text indexing than what we have today, and providing the really best possible end user experience for discovering and finding that content, which at the end of the day is also the purpose of digital preservation, to make it as findable as possible also in the future. Part of this is also, and these are discussions that we're going to have with the digital preservation working group, is how do we preserve data which was generated by AI. So we're going to have clear indications of which data has been generated by AI. And also we're going to have to talk about how we document not only which data, but also which agent and any other piece of information which could help you in the future analyze why and how this data was produced. So looking forward to those discussions. Just a glimpse on the discovery. So here, this is a new page which is being developed as part of a project called the NDE, which is the Next Discover Experience. And the idea here is to combine, well, traditionally we had a separate page for the full record view in Primo and a viewer. The idea is to avoid the need for having an additional click and to have a single record page, a full record page, which will provide you all information you need, including the full delivery experience. And that way you don't have to have two separate pages. So here you can see that you have, this is still work in progress, but this is being starting development very, very soon. So you have a full view, and under that you have all the different services. You can have the different authorities. You can have a map of different locations of where this photo was taken, for example, of different locations mentioned in a book. And this is something which we did discuss, I think, in the last topical group, is what will be the equivalent of delivery of multiple representations. So here we will have, you will have the multiple representation section at the bottom, where you will very easily be able to skip between different representations. So this is in a way equivalent to the multiple representations that today we have on the left side of the IE viewer. So you can easily switch around between what's displayed at the top. The page remains the same because the metadata, the descriptive metadata, is common on the title level, and you can have some restricted representations where you'd need to sign in. So it's all managed in a very easy way in a single page. So that's one big project which we're working on. And also what you can see here is the tagging, which is going to be introduced later on with the GenAI, where you can see the different of authorities or people or places which were identified in the image. Sorry. And with an option also to link out to a full info page on that person. So again, this is really streamlining and providing as much information as possible to the end user who's searching. So it's not just about the scope of what's in this image or in this book, but also opening up the ability to explore beyond the scope of this specific entity over to further collections and data. And also a glimpse into the work which is going to be done. This is a mock-up, but this is the work which is starting development soon in Specto special collections around GenAI. So the idea is going to be, and just again to mention that in Specto you'll be able to have the modules will be preservation and special collections, and by default you can either have preservation or special collections. And you'll be able to expand your solution to include the other two, right? So you can't have neither, but you can have one or both, which you can acquire separately. So here the idea is that you can manage your content in a specific collection, and this collection is then includes information that was extracted by the system automatically. The system will be able to identify, in this case, it's images, in which images Einstein was detected, and you will then be able to go in and to have to mediate the information and to approve anything which was identified by the system. So the assumption here is that none of the information which is detected by GenAI is automatically cataloged and certainly not preserved. But you have to then approve the data. You have to review it in even to a level that if Einstein was identified on 100 different photos, you have to review you have to facet by Einstein, see all of those titles before you approve and sign off. You always have the ability of pulling specific images out of that grouping. So I won't go into the details now of this workflow. It's something which can be discussed separately, but just so you get a general idea of what this looks like, what the workflow will look like. So for example, you can select a specific person A, which has been grouped by the system. In other words, they identified that there's a person, but didn't identify that who the person is, but simply that they appear many times. So then you can tag this person just once. You can identify who this person is, link them to an authority, and then that will be in a way a batch cataloging, which will then apply whatever you identified on that person to all of the instances and the titles where that person was identified in the system. So there's always place here for also reverting your decisions to deleting a tag if it doesn't interest you, and so on. So all of the developments here are taken into assumption the control that catalogers and preservation managers want to have over the quality of the data which is in their system, and fully aware of the limitations also of AI. So those are all taken into account in the complete workflow which is provided here. So I'm going to stop now. I'll just say that we're going to continue full steam discussions with the working groups. We have upcoming. I have a meetup with the German customers next week, and some other meetings with specific customers. Any of you who want to have another one-on-one conversation about what we're planning, what we want to do, there's a lot of opportunities here for collaboration, either partnership, early adopters, or just simply talk and understand how this could impact your specific institution. And please reach out, and I'll set up a meeting. So I think there are questions? There are questions. Okay. Does S3 deposit also work together with the S3 submission format? I don't know if Dan knows the answer for that. I can see that Dan is here. Otherwise, I will get back to you on that.
I mean, well, what you mean in terms of the development that you presented, if it's together with the S3 submission format, that is the question?
Yes, that's a question.
Okay.
If the S3 submission format puts everything in the right bucket when S3 deposit is also configured.
That's actually, I was less involved in this development specifically. It worked with the submission for S3 submission format, but this question maybe we need to check with you as
We'll get back to you on that.
Lead at this one.
Okay, so can I also add reason through the API? Dan Shaw, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, they can.
Well, API, well, basically we don't touch the SOAP API anymore. And in the REST API, we don't have yet the option to update.
Okay, sorry. So that's
So
my mistake then. Is that something, Mickey? I don't know if you want to unmute yourself. Do you currently make changes to IEs through APIs? Do you update metadata via APIs?
Well, not the metadata. We're planning to, so we're currently working on that.
Yeah.
And that would be something that we want to do. But I mean, it wouldn't matter if it's integrated into the REST API. That'd be fine too. If that general capability to update IEs will be available through REST with that reason.
Okay, so I'll write that down as another potential candidate for 8.3. Okay. Do I understand correctly that operational storage still needs to be NFS? The S3 update is for deposit storage in addition to the existing permanent storage only, correct? Yes, you still need the operational storage, and that's really because running the different services on operational storage is a completely different opera than just storing it, and it's something which we are, by the way, going to be working on as part of the next gen solution, because we're working only against Amazon currently. So eventually we are going to be providing a solution for that, and we might see if the solution that we provide as part of Specto preservation will be able to also possibly apply for on-premise Rosetta, but no guarantees. But currently, yes, that's the situation. You still need NFS. Is the number of digital presentations in the analytics screenshot the same as number of IEs, or is it a representation in the Rosetta sense of a representation? It is a representation in the Rosetta sense of a representation. As I mentioned in one of the previous meetings, then currently we're going ahead with a very straightforward mapping or assumption that the bibliographic and cataloged title is equivalent to the IE in Rosetta. Which we know is not the case in many use cases where you have sort of multi-part entities. And in that case, we're going to allow for mapping between a bibliographic title having multiple representations, where each representation is mapped to a separate intellectual entity. So currently the analytics is reflecting the equivalent of Rosetta representations, but again, with no sort of more complex mapping between the two. When do you expect to give a demo of Specto preservation on the progress? So we're going to be providing a demo in our next topical group, and at some point also we're going to do a webinar. We're going to be doing a webinar on Specto in general, split into preservation and also non-preservation, and there we'll be able to share full demo. The main milestone which I want to reach before doing a proper demo is the risk management, or at least the basic level of the risk management. So you can also give us feedback on the direction that we're taking there. So that should be relatively soon. So for delivery, you are moving away from IIIF Universal Viewer and staying with OpenSUJAGen. No, that's not. We are certainly one of the foundations of the delivery is going to be IIIF. Not only not just OpenSUJAGen, we are going to be running a research now. We're going to be comparing different tools such as Mirador and Universal Viewer. We're not going to be using just OpenSUJAGen. It's an essential component here will be the interoperability and the ability also to pull in external resources and to be able to run against a full manifest of an IE. So unless there are any other questions, then we will wrap it up for today. Thank you very much for joining. There's going to be another session later on, and this recording will be sent out later on. So thanks all for joining early, late, wherever you are, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Daniel. There it goes.